Hello, friends. Welcome to another podcast of the Pure Living Family Podcast. I'm genuinely very excited to have this conversation for a number of reasons. The main one is there's a lot of conversations online of moms with kids with autism or special needs moms finding support, finding network. There's a lot of noise in that space, and there's, in my opinion, not enough voices on the dad's side. Not to lessen or diminish what moms go through. It is heavy, it is big, it is a burden, but dads need support too. And so for that reason, Leon, I'm very excited to welcome you in, and thanks for joining this conversation.
Glad to be here.
Well, awesome. So quick summary of how we met. Leon's very active with his platform, which we'll dive into here later in the conversation, on TikTok, sharing this platform that is AI technology to support parents of kids with autism with special needs. And Leon's the creator of that. And so I wanted to have him on to tell his story. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about you? Where are you from? And kind of your story of how you created this app.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So I am from North Carolina. I work as a DJ, and I've been a DJ for the last 20 years. And a few years ago, 4 years ago, my son was diagnosed with level 3 autism. And we had to wait a long time for that diagnosis. They actually had us go through all sorts of tests and everything else. We did genetics test, and we kept saying that he was autistic, and they kept saying that he wasn't. And then one day we finally, we were at an appointment, and they said, "Do you think he's autistic?" We said, "Yes, we've been saying this for the last 2 years." And they said, "Well, we didn't think he was autistic because he's so handsome." And that was coming from Duke University Hospital saying that to us.
Wow.
They still didn't do the diagnosis. We actually had to go to a third party to get the diagnosis done. And once that happened, there really wasn't any other help. We've had him in occupational therapy. They fired him from that. Well, fired because they said that he wasn't reaching the milestones that he was supposed to in a reasonable time. We've been very fortunate with his speech therapist. He absolutely loves her, and he's got a great pediatrician. But other than that, there's just absolutely no help. And so one night he had a meltdown for about 6 hours. A really bad one. I mean, screaming to the point that I thought he was going to pass out. And he was running back and forth and screaming, and I'm trying everything, and absolutely nothing is working. And he finally cried so hard that he just kind of passed out. He didn't pass out, but he fell asleep on the floor, and I picked him up, put him into his bed, and I sat down on my recliner, and I closed my eyes, and I'm trying to calm down, and my heart's just pounding. And I'm closing my eyes, and I start to drift off into this very uncomfortable sleep. And then it kind of hit me that if I don't have this kind of support, more than likely there are other families that don't have this kind of support. And so I started doing the research, and I had this idea for, first it started off as just an agent that I could talk to, that would have a knowledge base, that knew about autism, that could give me the facts, so that if I had a question, it would be able to answer it. And then I started thinking about it, and I did the research, and I saw that there was over 4 million families that are involved with autism somehow. And I said, well, wait a second. What if I put this into an app that they can access at any time? And then it just kind of grew from there.
And that was how long ago?
About 6 months ago was when I first got the idea and started working on it.
So let's just rewind a little bit from with your son. His name is August.
Yes,
He's 6 years old today. You guys had the thought that he had autism. About what age? Like, what made you think? What were the signs, symptoms that jumped out at you guys that you felt like he had autism?
Not making eye contact was a big one. Hand flapping was another one. He wasn't meeting milestones. He wasn't walking when when we were expecting him to. He wasn't crawling when we were expecting him to. a lot of verbal, not sadism, a lot of verbal. What is the word I'm looking for? Stemming. There we go.
Probably,
A lot of
yeah.
verbal stemming, saying a lot. And
Mm,
especially because when he started walking, his occupational therapist was the one who taught him how to walk. Even then, he would only walk on his tiptoes. So
mm.
all of those were very clear signs to us from what we were researching that he was most likely autistic.
And that's interesting that your providers at the time were not agreeing that he had autism. They were just thinking it was something else. So what kind of tests were they doing?
We, man, I don't even remember half of the tests. I do remember we did a genetics test where they tested, I think, 60 million different, I don't know how they worded it, not genes, because there's not 60 million genes, but 60 million different like variations of the genes. They said it was the most advanced genetic testing that they had available, and they still didn't find anything on that. And yeah, it's just they didn't really say what they thought it was. They basically just said that he's going to catch up. There's nothing wrong with this. You know, we don't need to look further into it. And it was very obvious. I mean, I don't know if they just didn't care what was going on at the house, what we were explaining to them, or if they were afraid. I've heard that a lot of professionals are afraid to diagnose because if they get it wrong, it basically labels that person for the rest of their life. But either way, that's something that they've got to change. There's nothing I can do about that. So.
Yeah. You said this was at Duke University, and was this just like his primary care provider?
No, we were referred. His primary provider is actually in Dunn, North Carolina, and they're amazing. You know, anytime we need something from the insurance company, we fill out the template and we just half the time she doesn't even read it. She just signs it and passes it on to the insurance company. So I mean, she knows that we know better than anyone else what our son is going to need. But as far as that testing went, they had to follow procedure and everything else.
Yeah. So you went to Duke University, and did a bunch of tests with them, and they said because your son is so handsome, he does not fit the autism diagnosis.
Yep. They said we didn't think he was autistic because he was so handsome, is the exact words they told us.
Huh. Interesting. My son was diagnosed at the University of Utah, and the intake process was awful because it was a bunch of questionnaires of like what can't your kid do, and that list started to grow a lot. And that's when he was diagnosed. So 6 months ago, this is when your son was going through his crying spell. You're trying to figure out, I don't know what to do next. If I don't know what to do, there's many other parents out there that don't know what to do. So walk us through that. So you go and create, um, tell us the name and of your platform, and what exactly it entails and does for people.
So the name of it is Nova Autism, and I named it Nova because my son loves anything to do with space. So that was my dedication to him because first and foremost, I created it for my son, and then everyone else, including myself, goes after. So basically, what it does is it's got a curated knowledge base of all verified and credible sources. So around right now, it's around 300 PDFs from all credible sources. There's no opinions in there. It is all fact and research based. And it is only AI in the sense that it can communicate with you and it can personalize its answers, but it can only access the knowledge base. Think of the knowledge base as its brain. And it sorry, had the squirrel moment there for a moment. Uh,
Yeah, that's all good.
so it can only access that. It can't access the internet, and it can't argue with you, and it can't make up opinions. It can only tell you based on the facts that it knows. And so
So,
you
yeah,
can speak to it on a variety of things. Basically, think of it as an autism expert in your back pocket whenever you need it. But it does not replace professionals. Nova is meant to be there as support for the times in between when you see those professionals.
And talk to us about the credible sources. So, how did you deem what was credible and what wasn't, and adding that knowledge base into the platform?
Well, it's a lot like I don't know if you know the old anecdote by about Henry Ford when he was speaking to a reporter, and a reporter was trying to embarrass him, saying that how could he run this business if he didn't know all these answers? And he said, "Well, I may not know all the answers, but I have a button on my desk so I can call people that do know the answers." And to me, technology is that button on my desk. So the first thing I did was I used a couple of different AI. I used ChatGPT and I used another one that's not coming to mind right now. And I asked it to research every single credible source there was and to find me PDFs. And then after that was done, I went through and I read as much as I could. I read every single one, and then I doubled back, fed it in again, asked it to check anything as far as opinions or anything else goes, and I basically triple vetted it. And then once I was happy with it, to make sure that there were no opinions in any of them and that it was actually factually based, that was the only time that I actually put it in. There's probably 60 or 70 that I just tossed to the side.
Okay. And walk us through examples of scenarios of when someone would use Nova Autism.
There's there's a lot. So you could use it when your child is overwhelmed. You could use it when you yourself are burned out. You could use it to create a meal plan for your child due to sensory issues. You could use it to deal with the steps involved in IEP, SSI. You could use it if there was abuse if you were suspecting abuse at school. I mean, literally anything that you can think of that has to do with autism, it will support you in.
Okay. Well, is there anything in particular that has helped you the most in that process as you build this out?
Uh, Honestly, just having someone to talk to, because there's a lot of times, especially meltdowns. Meltdowns for me would be the biggest one, because one of the things that you can do with Nova is it has uh, profiles. So you can put your child or your friend or whoever it may be, a client, in there and list their sensory issues. You can list what soothes them. There's a whole list, and that sends to the back end of the agent. So when you're speaking to the agent, it personalizes it specifically to that person. So when I speak to Nova and I say, "Hey, August is having a meltdown, I'm not sure what to do here," it'll ask me, one of the things that he enjoys is having his arms squeezed, up and down. That kind of, helps regulate him at times. And it'll say, "Have you tried this?" And if I go through those steps and it doesn't work, then it'll say, "Okay, well, let's plan this a different way. How about we turn down the lights a little bit? The TV's on. You don't have to turn it off. Turn down the volume. See where that leads." There have been many times that it will provide me with information, which amazes me because I'm the one who built the thing, but it'll provide me with information that work, and I actually implement it into my daily steps now when I'm helping him when it comes to his eating habits, or when he's having a meltdown, or even elopement. There's just so many different things, honestly, that it's helped me with.
I love that. The personalized medicine is, especially when it comes to kids with autism, because as the saying goes, if you've met one kid with autism, you met one kid with
Hmm.
autism, because everyone is so unique. So I love that personalized message of it all. I've taken note of this, because in those high stress environments, we don't really think clearly
No.
when we're stressed.
Yeah.
So does that also, as you're going through that kind of checklist, is it reminding you to do certain actions to help you with
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
nervous system?
Yeah, and I apologize for interrupting, but yeah, absolutely. Nova is trained to help with caregiver burnout just as much as it's trained to deal with the autistic individual. It is trained on meditative steps. It is trained on how to help relax the vagus nerve. And it always it always focuses on calming you down as much as calming down the autistic individual, because it's trained to know that if you're overwhelmed to the point that you can't think, you're not going to be much help to anyone else.
Hmm. I love that. And what is your vision long term for the tool?
I would love to get it worldwide, honestly. Right now, I don't have the resources. More so because I mean it supports, on the app itself, it supports 15 different languages. On the agent, it supports 32 languages. So the foundation is there. However, I do have a resource page that is separated by state. I've built one of the largest resource autism databases in the United States, and I would love to do that worldwide, but that's going to be a much bigger cloud, a lot more information, and I'm going to have a team to help me out with it. But eventually, yes, I would like, I mean, because there's, I think, 100 million, estimated 100 million autistic individuals in the world right now that need help, and that would ultimately be where I would like to go with it.
Talk about the resources that you have. So, here in the United States in particular, I don't know if you can list them or give examples of what you mean by that resource availability.
So there are so many that I wouldn't even begin to list as. So numbers to help with SSI, numbers to help with is calling for different medical necessities for an autistic individual. If you have, say, for instance, and no shame in it at all, but there are some parents that have level 3, autistic individuals that are adults, and they unfortunately can't care for them anymore. There's resources on who they can call to help put them, in a home, but somewhere that is, just not tossing them to the side. I'm not sure how to say it. There are so many different resources that I wouldn't even begin to state all of them, even for one state.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important point because, 50, 60 years ago, a lot of times with kids with severe, profound autism were admitted to psychiatric ward facilities, and a lot of times were awarded to the state. And unfortunately, they did a lot of testing on those types of kids. So really cool resource center that you're building out there. Maybe you and I just chat for a second on those dads out there that maybe are going through this process. Because I went through maybe almost a year of denial, like my kid's gonna outgrow this stage. It's just a stage. What was that like for you as far as your experience? Did you go through a denial phase? And if so, what was that like for you?
I I did kind of go through a denial phase. It was a little bit different for me because it took 2.5 years to get my son diagnosed, and I kind of realized the signs way before he actually was diagnosed. I was working with a company at the time, and I was working with a gentleman who has an autistic child, and he was trying to push not for me not to have August diagnosed, because he was saying that you don't know if he's autistic, and they're very quick to say that they're autistic, which is not true, by the way. And he said, that'll label him for the rest of his life, and people won't respect him and all this other stuff. So he was saying all these kind of scare tactics, which I'm honestly not sure why. Maybe it's just a different experience for him. That was kind of what gave me the stomach drop, not worrying about myself, but worrying about how people would view my son. But by the time he was diagnosed, it had been so long, I had gotten past that point of fear and not accepting it and everything like that, denying it. And so by the time he was diagnosed, I just kind of went, okay, cool. I'm glad to know what level he's at, and all right, let's do this. And that was basically it.
Okay. And that was somewhat recent, right? That official diagnosis, how long ago was
So
that?
he was around 4 years old, I believe, was when he was diagnosed. So about 2 years ago.
Okay. What sort of advice would you give to dads out there now that you've gone through kind of the diagnosis phase and the acceptance phase of that? What sort of input, guidance would you tell to dads that are going through that challenging time?
You need to be an advocate for your child because no one else is going to be. And
Mm,
we are a community that are millions strong, but when it comes down to it, it's just you. And while that is kind of painful to say and is something that we really do need to change, most of you are not going to have a village in the traditional sense that you think you would. So it is you are your child's voice. You need to speak up. Absolutely. Because your child is going to be one of the strongest people you have ever met in your life. And you need to be just as strong for them.
yeah. What do you wish you had as support in this journey?
Uh, Probably someone that I could trust to watch my child for an hour or two once in a while. That's one of the big things, and I'm sure you know as well. When your child is especially nonverbal, you really have to vet who you're allowing around them, and not to mention elopement. One person you tell them, "Hey, you need to lock the door," and they forget, and all of a sudden they're gone. So,
Yep.
I would say just a little bit of support as far as so that I have an hour or two, for some me time.
I get that. I laugh because I know that intimately. We fortunately have been able to get state assistance to have that very type of coverage, but even still having state funded assistance, the vetting process is challenging. And when you do find someone that does well with your kid, you do everything you can to make sure they stick around,
Yeah.
especially when your kid does well with them. And we're very fortunate currently to have a caretaker that loves Theo and Theo loves her, because that does make a huge difference. And honestly, if that was the gift that I would recommend to family members, like extended family members of kids with severe profound autism, is that go watch the kid, go take the kid on a drive for 1 or 2 hours, take them to the park. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yes, it's going to be hard. You won't know what to do when they have a meltdown. And yes, you might have embarrassment with how the people perceive your grandkid or your nephew or niece because they might do some weird, strange, quirky things. And you will have to just learn to deal with the judgment. So, to the extended family members out there, if you want to help, that is a huge place to help. Well, cool. Anything else you can think of for our community? Maybe it's for the moms or for the dads. Anything else you can think of as far as whether that's Nova Autism or anything else that you feel like you want to give advice to the people out there that share our reality?
Hmm. And like I said before, being the voice for your child is the biggest thing. Uh, but just remember, like I said again, you're not alone. There are millions of us, and our voices are getting louder every single day. And it's up to us to stand together. Even when you feel like you're isolated, you're not because we see you. Uh, and again, that's the exact reason why I built Nova was so that we would have that support in those moments where we do feel completely alone. Um, and yeah, just I mean, I know it kind of it may sting a little bit to say just keep being strong, but I can tell you, especially if this is the start of your journey, one of the most amazing things about my son is every single day I get to see innocence in his eyes. He sees the world in a completely different way than I do. He doesn't understand the concept of evil. And while that, as a father, terrifies me because it means I always have to be vigilant when I'm watching him, it also means that I can see that the world is still beautiful, even if it's through his eyes. So count the blessings, and it's autism is not something you should shun. They're just seeing it in a different way than we do. And there is something beautiful in that. So just pay attention to it.
Mm, I love that. How do people find you, both the app and you on social media? How do people engage with what you're trying to do?
Well, you could find me on TikTok on Nova Autism, and you can access the website if you'd like to check out the website first at novaautism.com. And if you would like to go straight to the app instead, you can go to portal.novaautism.com. And feel free to hit me up on TikTok. I answer as many messages as I can, as quickly as I can.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing a bit more of your story. And obviously, it's very clear to me that you love your child, your boy August, very, very much. And it's not easy to show up when we have kids with such high needs. So I just want to recognize you for the devotion you are putting into him as well as to the community. And let us know if there's anything we can do to support you as you build this platform and try to provide more relief and resources to the people out there that are needing it.
I would say the biggest thing is use Nova, share it, and yeah. I mean, the more people that see it, and the more people that use it, it gives me more resources to make it better and expand upon it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Leon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.